Hello and welcome. I'm Samantha Simmons. I'm joined for the duration of the show by Rupa Huq, Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton, and by Sir Bob Neal, Conservative MP for Bromley and Chislehurst, who chairs the Justice Select Committee. Very good morning to you both. Great to have you on the show today.
But it is racism. There's no other word for it.
Rupa, you're nodding.
Yeah, I mean, anti-Semitism and misogyny. I think these oaths were saying something about rape as well, has no place on our streets. And they should feel the full force of the law. I'm glad that 4 people were swiftly arrested. And again, it just seems illogical that things happening millions of miles away in Gaza are being blamed on people in Golders Green. It makes no logical sense at all. And the Community Security Trust do some really good work. I've spoken to them before. I mean, it's a sad reality that these things that happen in the Middle East have repercussions here. 500% increase in anti-Semitic verbal abuse, spitting, all these things is horrific. The Tell Mama charity has also reported a 438% rise in Islamophobia as well. And sometimes these events far away, as I say, they sort of have repercussions here. So we heard Sinophobia. We know that Trump used to go around calling it the China virus. I think there's been a 179% increase in anti-Chinese racism since the start of coronavirus. People, taking out their frustration and anger. It's just ridiculous, and it has no place on our streets. We need a zero tolerance attitude to all this, which I'm pleased.
Just to explain, Rupa, Tell Mama is an organisation that monitors Islamophobic hate crime. But I want to ask you about your former party leader, Jeremy Corbyn, who was on the stage at yesterday's protest in central London. Is that helpful for your party?
I mean, look, people have a right to express, obviously emotions are running high about what's happening in the Middle East, but there's no need to whip up hatred towards communities here, diaspora communities who have nothing to do with all that. I mean, we could go on and on about the disappointment since the 1993 Oslo Accords that peace in the Middle East seems very far away. Okay, we have a ceasefire at the moment, but still we need to attack the root causes, but that's entirely separate from the stuff going on our streets. And but I don't know what he was saying. I wasn't there. I think there is a I Stand With Israel demo today as well.
Sure. Well, let's see if he turns up at that one. But the fact that he appeared at this rally when there were people there with anti-Semitic placards and slogans, and the fact that he has in the past said that he was friends with Hezbollah and Hamas, given that he's at the very heart of claims of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party over the past few years, shouldn't he just stay away?
I mean, look, I honestly don't know what happened there, and people do have a right to demonstrate. There'll be the I Stand With Israel demo today as well, but there's no excuse for people in those crowds to be chanting anti-Semitic messages. They are not helping the cause of the Palestinians or the Gazans. It's counterproductive. So I would say, those kind of things, again, they're punishable by law, and the full force of the law should be felt on those racists.
Let me just bring Rupa back in because she wants to say something.
Yeah, no, Mark mentioned Holocaust denial, and it's very worrying that there's a free speech law going through at the moment that, on the face of it, could give legitimate space to people like that to preach on university campuses. I think freedom of speech should have limits as well.
It's a worthy cause to bring the rest of the country up to London's levels. Yeah. It mustn't be at the cost of what is our great economic asset.
Rupa?
I totally agree with, I'm his vice chair actually on that APPG, with Bob, that you don't level up the rest of the country by levelling down London. And we do generate the bulk of the nation's wealth. In fact, more than, we're a net contributor, more than Wales and Scotland put together. So sort of this divisive caricature that was mentioned of sort of the metropolitan elitists versus the genuine people of the north, the authentic people. It just seems wrong to pit parts of the country against each other, because also there is great diversity within regions. So as Bob pointed out, some of the poorest wards in the country are in London. And when you can kind of see Canary Wharf blinking away, that's even worse.
Yeah, so
it's cost about 2.5 billion. That happened before the pandemic.
One reduced TfL's operating debt by 71% from that last bloke who happens to be PM at the moment. I mean, this is complete fallacy. Actually, the historic reasons for TfL's underfunding is that George Osborne cut the support revenue grant to it. And it is a way that we have a really anti-London administration, which is weird because we have a London MP and ex-mayor of London at the helm. But the rest of the country's railways had a £5 billion bailout. They didn't have any conditions on that they have to extend a congestion charge and look into charging under 18s. It's just a bizarre lopsided snobbery. I mean, levelling up is fine as long as it's transparent and fair. But what we've seen with TfL is it blatantly isn't.
Okay.
And to blame Sadiq Khan, it's just nonsense. It's party political, as you say.
Rupa?
The government's had to be dragged kicking and screaming for every little bit of crumbs they've put on this table. I think last time I was on this programme, we were discussing the same subject, and we're nearly on the eve of the 4-year anniversary of Grenfell. It seems progress has been painfully slow, and that particular block, New Providence Wharf, is a private one. I think there's even more sort of red tape when it's a private block, not a housing association one, because they're sort of individual people that have to bid into the fund. I've got a number of mostly housing association blocks, but the private one seems to have the sticking point that it's proving very difficult to unlock this money. And also, it's not just cladding. There are, wood burns and there are timber balconies on this building. So there's a whole load of defects that need fixing. And apparently in that particular case, not only the fire alarms didn't work, but because it's such a high building of 20 stories, the fire brigade's ladders weren't even long enough. The eyewitness accounts are really, really harrowing. It was a luxury block. I think the properties in there cost up to £3 million each. And now, looking at the pictures of the charred remains, the government is dragging its feet. And maybe it's because, there aren't enough of these blocks in the Red Wall or something, that there's a concentration in London. I don't know why they're doing this. It would be quite easy to sort it, maybe even remedial loans.
Okay. Bob, just briefly, easy to sort. People like you should be putting more pressure on the Prime Minister and his cabinet colleagues. Thanks very much. Well, that is all we have time for this week. My thanks to my guests, to Rupa and to Bob. I do hope you can join us again in 2 weeks' time.